everybody. Welcome again to Generational Change. My name is Michele Snyder, and I'm so excited that we can continue our conversation with Derek Paul with Identify Ministries. In the first episode, he gave us his personal testimony of how Jesus freed him from same-sex attraction, and now we get to hear more of his personal story of what he went through with his family, with his 5-year-old son in the public schools. So welcome back and welcome, Derek.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I think this is going to be an eye-opening moment for many in the church who have never heard of these things going on. They don't really talk about this in church. It's not always appropriate in every setting, but this is the setting that we can talk about this freely.
It really is. And really for generational change, it is geared for kingdom believers and discussions that we don't normally have, and understanding that we have got to infiltrate the kingdom of God in our everyday life, in our communities, in our homes, in our churches. So I am just grateful that we're just diving right in on further discussion with the LGBT lifestyle.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me.
So let's get right into hearing your personal experience with your family and your son in public school.
Yes, absolutely. So I was really excited for the life that the Lord had given me. I had dealt with my LGBT feelings and issues, and I had settled into my family. My wife and I were growing our family. We had a 5, 3, and 1-year-old at home, and I was working full time. The Lord called me in fall of 2017 to step away from my full-time job. My wife and I switched places, and I was doing ministry from home with a 5, 3, and 1-year-old. And my 5-year-old had just started kindergarten. Now, I don't know about you guys, but public school is like a rite of passage. And we were so excited for our son to be in kindergarten. He was at a great school. And so right before the incident, I was invited to share my testimony at a Teens for Truth event at the Southwest Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, Texas. And I knew about my story, but I wasn't familiar with what was going on in the public schools. And I listened to these teachers who were sharing about the books and what was going on in the library and how their schools had been infiltrated by these free curriculums and funded collections for their libraries. And I thought, okay, yeah, well, that's not happening at my kid's school.
In Florida.
And I was encouraged by a couple people to really look into what was going into my kid's school and watch a documentary. So I did. And I get home, I watched the documentary, and I thought, okay, well, that's not so bad, is it? I don't understand that that's such a bad thing. I was used to the way that the schools worked. Well, a couple weeks later, we're sitting around the dinner table, and I asked my son, what did you learn today at school? And he said, well, he's 5. And he said to me, I learned you can't tell what someone is by what they look like. I thought that was the weirdest thing for a 5-year-old to say. My son didn't talk like that or structure things that way. So I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, well, girls can cut their hair off and boys can wear dresses. And I was stunned. I didn't know where this was coming from. I look at my wife, horrified, and my wife is like, it was a kilt, right? Like she's trying to think maybe this is a cultural thing that he was exposed to at the school. And so I went on to our kindergarten Facebook page, and I posted and asked if any of the other parents had their child say something like this today. I just wanted to know if anyone knew anything about this situation. And I had a couple parents that got very defensive about me just asking that question. So the next day, my wife ended up calling the school. She went in when she went to drop him off into the library where this occurred, and she saw a slew of sexualized LGBT books in the kids section, in the young section.
In elementary school.
In elementary school. And she talked to his kindergarten teacher who had no idea that this had occurred and didn't have any of those books out or had never read those books. She was a Christian kindergarten teacher. Wow. And when we started asking questions, it was like all of a sudden everything was buttoned up. We weren't getting any answers. No one was admitting anything. And we're like, how did our son come across this book? What he was describing was the book I Am Jazz, which is a book about a young male who transitions to be a girl in the elementary school ages. And so this is a book marketed to the youngest elementary grades. And so I was floored. I would not have even known of this book if I hadn't gone to that conference. So, of course, my wife and I are looking into how did this happen? What should we do next? Because we didn't expect this to happen in one of the best elementary schools in our county. And we eventually decided to finish out the year and pull our son from public school. And we thought, okay, we're going to learn to do this. I was an occupational therapist before, so I thought, okay, I know human development and children, so I'll be the most comfortable doing the homeschool. I really loved getting to go with my kids around town, and I would take them to the public library just down the street, not even a mile maybe from our home. And so every week I would go to the public library, so I knew what it looked like. I went through the summer, and I started into the fall. And then September, October rolls around, and all of the library looked the same except the sectioned off kids section. When we got into the kids section, there were LGBT books at eye height for like toddlers on up. And those were on display. And those were the books that were put out for you to see. And there were coloring pages that said, say no to banned books with megaphones on them for the little kids to color on. And I was really interested in World War II and what happened there. And so I knew that some of the propaganda that happened back then were coloring pages for children. They would introduce them to new things through coloring pages. So when I saw the coloring pages and saw the books, I was horrified. I thought, I've pulled my kids from public school. I never expected to do that. I was excited for them to go to public school. And now I'm doing all of this work with a 6, 4, and 2-year-old at the time. And I take them to a public school, and now it's on full display, but only in the children's section. That's what horrified me. And so I go to the library manager, and I ask her, why are you only promoting these sexual books for children? Why are the books that are out only sexual books? I didn't understand. It wasn't like it was 10% of the books that were being put on display. It was nearly every single book. And she's like, well, this is normal. This is what our kids are supposed to get. And I mean, I just couldn't believe it. So I said, well, this needs to end. And we need to clean up these coloring pages. This is inappropriate. This is like World War II type stuff. And so we're picking up the pages. And I said, we live in one of the most literate, educated towns in all of Florida. We have a university here, a college here. We have 4-year-olds that can read at like a 1st and 2nd grade level sometimes. They can read what's on these coloring pages here. And she's like, oh, you don't understand. We do this for birth on up. And when she said that, I thought, she is literally targeting children from birth with the LGBT books. And I couldn't believe that. So I'm picking up the papers, and she asks for my stack of papers. And I was like, no, I need evidence. Because I knew that no one would believe me. It's too preposterous to say that there are sexual books only in the kids section and that are put on display for them to pick up, and that there are coloring pages that are telling them what they should think about the nature of books when they're not even cognitively ready to know what that is yet, but they're being primed.
So here's what stands out to me in listening to this that happened, just
2017. Yes.
In Florida.
Correct.
And, thinking about our communities, thinking about our churches, thinking about, I can't imagine that people would believe that you actually saw that and went through that.
Yeah, I mean, when the book I Am Jazz was read to my son, everyone just said to me, the Christians that I knew just said to me, "Oh, well, that was just your kid." And I thought that was a really weird statement. Why does my kid matter less than other people's children? It's just one child, like my son's value isn't enough. But then when the coloring pages and the books in the children's section, it was preposterous. I don't think anyone would imagine that nearly every book, and I'm not saying like 10 books, I'm saying like tens of books, like 30, 40 books on display were all sexual in nature, sexual orientation, gender identity in nature. And these children don't even have an understanding of society yet.
I'm so shocked to hear this because you just can't imagine that it's right there in your own town.
Correct.
That,
yes.
I have 3 sons. I have 3 boys, and they're adults now, but I took them to the library, and we're talking 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I'm taking my little kids to the library, and we just cannot imagine that you would go into the preschool area.
Correct.
And open up books with children having reassigning their gender. I mean, like, how they don't even know what that is.
Yes, or changing their names. Or
wearing a dress if they're a little boy.
Yes, and children being cross-dressed. Children knowing more about their sex than their parents could ever know. It was shocking to see. And so when that happened, I started looking into, why is it specifically the libraries? Why is it that it got me thinking, why did the Christian teacher have no idea that this book was read to my son? And I realized it had to do with the library system. And I needed to look into where these books came from.
And is that a state library system? Is that a federal library system? Like, what? Because didn't you find that it was in all the libraries in the state of Florida?
Correct. So the American Library Association is kind of the main credentialing sort of organization, and they provide the standards. They are the ones that are letting the librarians and the media specialists know what should be in their collections, what should be promoted. So they, since the early 90s, when I was looking into their Office of Informational Freedom, I found that since the early 90s, they were promoting the most challenged books directly to children as the target audience.
Is that federal?
I believe it is. The library system is given federal funds. It's in the tens of millions of dollars. I don't know specifically how much the ALA gets of that.
Is that our tax dollars? Our tax dollars are going towards this
and there's a
society that decides what our 5-year-olds are going to read.
Correct. They are the ones who are deciding and telling the librarians in all of the public libraries what their collections should look like and how to promote that collection. So if you go on I believe it's bandbooks.org, you can see what they're going to promote this coming fall. There's a list of the top books. You'll see that a majority of those books are always
Do
sexual.
they have to list it? I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
I don't believe that they have to list it, but they have a program where they promote Banned Books Week. But Banned Books Week actually is the week that they read the books directly to the kids, but the celebration of Banned Books Week is for the entire month. So the books are on display for the entire month. They're promoted for the entire month. And then the media specialist or librarian reads these books that are the most challenged books. They promote those and read them directly to the children. And I had no understanding that this could possibly occur. When I saw it, it seemed like it was out of a horror novel.
So what can we do to combat that?
Sure.
As a parent, as a community leader, as, even in our schools and churches, what can we do to glean knowledge, and then what can we do to combat it?
Yeah. So the first thing you can do is actually go to bannedbooksweek.org.
Okay.
And you can see exactly the books that will be promoted. Then you can go to booklooks.org and you can see the objectionable content of the book without checking it out.
Okay.
You can cross-reference that with your school's library, and you can look up what books are in your school's library and see the content. So you can, from that information, you can fill out a form and challenge a book. And this book can be taken up to the state level, and they can deal with it if the county is not able to deal with it.
Okay, very good information. Wow. I want to thank you to this episode's sponsor, Dixie County Anti-Drug Coalition. Their mission is to promote and develop a more positive and safe environment for the Dixie County youth as well as young adults and adults by educating on the dangers of alcohol and other drugs and by uniting people and services to assist in the prevention effort. Thank you again to Dixie County Anti-Drug Coalition for sponsoring this episode. Can we discuss a little bit about the parental rights and education laws versus the library collection?
Yes, absolutely. So the parental rights and education law governs the formal curriculum that is presented to the children. So that protects the children from a formal curriculum that is giving them DEI and sexual orientation, gender identity in the formal curriculum. What it doesn't do is protect them from the media sources in the public library at the school or in the teacher's personal library in her classroom. So the library at the school is not under the parental rights and education law, and they can bring in a collection. Normally, they are told, the media specialists are told, a sample collection of what they should pick to start a new school. And so they will get an entire collection all at once when they start a new school. And then if a teacher wants to have a private collection in her room of books, then she's allowed to have that because it is not part of the formal curriculum. So the books and the media that deal with sexual orientation and gender identity are able to get into the school in other ways.
So even, Florida is pretty aggressive in protecting children. Governor DeSantis has passed down several new laws in the last several years. But what I hear you say is we could walk into any public elementary school.
Yes.
And we can walk into the library and still find these books for 5-year-olds.
Yes, correct.
On display.
Correct. So many times they'll find loopholes in the books for these kids. So they will have a book that has a subject content for an older child, but the reading level is for a younger child, and it will be placed in the younger child's section of the library. So they will be exposed to content that is older than their developmental age. And they get around that by saying, especially in the elementary schools, well, any book that has words in it will help a child learn to read. And don't you want that child to be literate? Whereas in the older grades, middle school and high school, everyone is typically literate, or they should be by that point. So they don't have the same avenue to argue from. But for the children, they will directly put books in front of them that are not even checked out. You'll notice that some of these books have never been checked out, but they are in front of the children. When they visit the library, they can pull it off of the shelf and read it themselves, or someone could just come up and read it to them, and no one would ever know because it was never checked out.
What can parents do to get involved and to fight this?
Sure. So the first thing you can do is go to your school's library. You can also go to the public library and see what is there. Pray that the Lord would expose the books that are there. And then also go to your school board meetings and contact your representatives. Let them know what you are finding so that they can be aware and they can start moving things.
Awesome. Thank you for that. It also is very evident to all of us that we have got to get more involved in our communities, in our local governments, and in our federal government, because we're going to have to go after this federally, as they are funding the American Library Association. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you coming on. We're going to have you back because we have more to discuss. There's more things that we can draw out from what you have experienced.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And if you have any questions or comments, please contact me at Michele at etcint.org. That is Michele at etcint.org. You can also reach Derek at Identify Ministries. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode, and we will see you soon.
Generational Change is the faith arm of Empowered to Change International. Imagine a world where every person has the power to rise above challenges, embrace their potential, and create a brighter future. At Empowered to Change International, we believe transformation begins with empowerment. Through education, mentorship, and community-driven initiatives, we equip individuals with the tools they need to break barriers, achieve their dreams, and impact their communities. We are more than an organization. We are a movement, one dedicated to lifting individuals, families, and entire communities. We can't do it alone. Join us in making a difference. Whether you donate, volunteer, or spread the word, your support fuels transformation. Together, we are empowered to change.